the Southampton Town Board to order on this 9th day of March 2023. Please rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please be seated. Sunday, would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Schneiderman,
I'm here.
Councilwoman McNamara. Here. Councilman Martell.
Here.
Councilman Bouvier.
Here.
Councilman Scivone.
Present.
All right. So let's get right into this. So our first item on the agenda is reviewing the draft agenda for the March 14th meeting, which is next Tuesday at 1 o'clock here at Town Hall. And there are a number of public hearings, 7 of them, so it could be a long evening, a long day. I shouldn't have said evening, but it might get into the evening. Though I will speak to that in a second on one of them. But the first one is considering grant of conservation easement in connection with the subdivision of JSC Resources in West Hampton. Second one is acquiring lands of Peconic Bay Development LLC and amending CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. The third one is on the acquisition of lands of Rhonda S. Hesner and Dara Smith Yates Trust, amending the CPF management and stewardship plan. Number 4 is a public hearing to amend Chapter 312, authorized stop signs at the intersection of Wakeman Road and Gardenia Avenue, Hampton Bays. The 5th one is a public hearing to amend Chapter 312 to authorize stop signs at intersection of King Street and Gerald Lane. The 6th public hearing is on the acquisition of development rights of 7, 9, 11, 12, 15 Morrison Street in Sag Harbor, and to amend the Community Preservation Project Plan to include 15 Morrison Street and amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the other properties. The last one is public hearing to consider amending various sections of the town code in connection with retail cannabis dispensaries within the town of Southampton. So on number 6, that's a continuation of the contentious hearing that we held on the last day of February, the 28th. I know there's a lot going on in the community. People are trying to, show their strength and come out and speak either for or against this proposal. There were a lot of questions that remain unanswered about stormwater management, about the secret process. If what was said at the meeting about it being a type 1 action, then we would have to do an EIS, and that is at best the 6-month process.
It's clearly a type 1 action. Undoubtedly, it's a type 1 action. The question is, you have to make, then it requires the full EAF to be submitted, and then you have a coordinated review, and then at that point, you make a determination whether it requires the positive or not.
So,
but even that process, that initial process is going to take, the coordinated review, you would say at this point, it would probably take 45 to 60 days to go to the point where you're making the determination whether to POSDEC or not. And I think in this situation, the likelihood of a POSDEC is very high as well. So.
Right, so we can't possibly meet the school's calendar that they had originally hoped for.
No.
Which means that we need time, which means that rushing this doesn't make a lot of sense. And the school has said that they need time to finish the stormwater assessment plan or stormwater prevention plan, what's it called, SWIP?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've reached out to the school and said, look, rather than everybody dragging lots of people here and having an endless hearing, can we sort of both agree to an adjournment for a month to give some time to get some questions answered? The school is discussing that. They have the school board is discussing that this evening, whether they would sort of consent to a voluntary 1 month adjournment, and we could then broadcast out that our board intends to adjourn it for a month while we try to get answers to those questions and not have to drag everybody here on Tuesday.
But we would still have to hear. from
We'd have to
everybody.
still open the hearing, but we could then say, the school and the town are both looking to adjourn this for a month. We'd prefer that you wait till, well, I think it's April 11th with your comments. Obviously, if they feel like they need to be heard, we have to hear them. We certainly can do it via Zoom, but I would try to stress with people that where our intention is to adjourn it, not to close it. So this is not their last chance to speak. And, we are also having some conversations with the school on some alternatives that could be vetted in that period. So I'm just waiting to hear back from the school after the school board, after their meeting tonight. So I'm hoping that we will mutually consent to that. And then I would ask you guys, if the school board does message to me that they have no problem with a 1-month adjournment, that you guys would support a 1-month adjournment so we could get some of these questions answered. Is everybody okay with that?
If the school board is okay with that.
If the school
And
board-
I'm anticipating that there are going to be a number of people who are going to come out regardless and speak.
We can't stop them from
Right.
speaking.
And as is their right on this. We've adjourned the public hearing, so, they'll be here to speak.
If they know it's not their last opportunity, though, I
Right.
think some will say,
I agree.
we'll wait. Unfortunately, as this goes on, there are more divisions being formed. I mean, people cast one side as being anti-children, other side is anti-environment, and it's a small community. And I'm not sure that having the hearing at this point is constructive.
No.
However, people do have a right to be heard. They have a right to their positions. And I think that if we can get ourselves an extra month, maybe there can be some modifications to the approach that everybody can live with, and we can come up with something that is less contentious.
The rhetoric
not.
has been very divisive
Right.
and frankly counterproductive.
And we need to coordinate with their consultant, H2M, on the environmental process and see eye to eye on the process. I believe that we will. And so another month, if we can agree on the process, it's clearly a type 1 and most likely headed towards a POSDEC. So
We also have to decide as
everybody
a
agrees to
board,
that.
in terms of if we are to move forward, whether it would be as joint owners or development right owners, and to what degree we would expect the school to go through the village's planning process. So
Right, that's another. Sure.
that's also sort of an outstanding issue here that we need to resolve. So, Tommy John, did I interrupt you? I'm sorry.
No, I just said that it's divisive and
So
some of it's counterproductive, so.
If
Well,
there's,
I'm sorry, I have to say this, because I don't think we should have had the first public hearing, because we did not get the information that we had requested originally. So to delay it more, I think is important, but at the end of the day, it's the decision that this board makes, whether the school consents or otherwise. That isn't important to me, but what's important to me is to follow the process properly and protect the CPF. Originally, we did this, we agreed to this as a community park, and it's morphed into something entirely different, and that's mission creep in my view. But I don't think we should have a meeting until we get all the answers that we should have as a board to make an informed decision. That's my opinion.
No, I agree with you, John. I mean, we were tasked with a simple thing. Did we help put a community park next to the school or not? There wasn't any other, conserve it for anything else or have it for this or any other tangents to that. I think we should stay on task with that. And, at the same time, if we have to move forward slowly, which we do, the whole idea of a dump site and everything else going on with that property that came into play, And going back and looking at GIS and seeing that for 25 years, it was basically a dump. And what did that do? And are we going to put any of our community on that property if it's not the right thing to do? So I think we definitely need a little more time.
Well, I'll say this too. The reason why we had the hearing, is we gave the school sort of a litany of things that we wanted to see, and they responded back in a significant way, including including taking synthetic turf, even hybrid turf off the table. So they also, the school, who we entered this in the spirit of cooperation with the school, had said that they were concerned that the seller might not keep this available to the school, and they wanted to tie it in with their bond vote, school board vote in May. In May. So there was sort of this clock ticking, and we wanted to sort of hear from the public. It had gone on for a long time without giving the public an opportunity to weigh in, and we sure heard from the public. And if we don't agree to this adjournment, we're going to hear a lot more from the public, because there's going to be hundreds of potential people speaking on the 14th.
Well, I'll respond to that, because I think frankly that the idea that was originally proposed was a community park, and we can debate the definition of that. But the fact that it changed over time and became more complex is really the issue that you're dealing with here. And I don't necessarily agree with you that we got what we wanted from the school. I just don't.
Well,
it wasn't just about a turf field. There's a whole series of things involved in that, which was never part of the original proposal, which was a community park that the school could use for its education, for educating its students in various disciplines. But
So
again, that's just
I'll
one
respond to you
councilman's-
in that they did convey that they would meet our list of 12 items.
which they have not yet done.
Well, some of it will take time to do, but they will give us,
Right, but,
so we made a decision to go.
and the reason I was saying I don't know why we had a hearing originally
The other
was because
thing
it was
is-
contingent on getting the information that we requested, and we didn't. And that's the point I'm trying
But
to
the other
make.
point I want to make, and I understand that your idea of a community park was, more wooded, more little grass field kind of thing. I don't disagree with you. That's sort of what I thought a community park was too. But I don't think that the school ever had that in mind. I think the school had something right from the start. They wanted additional athletic fields. And this is what the school had in mind. So I think there was a miscommunication or misunderstanding. But I don't know that the school sort of baited and switched. I don't think so. I think this is always their intention, but we had a very different impression in mind.
So, can I just weigh in? Because
Yeah.
I was never under the impression that it was anything other than athletic fields for the school to use with community access to those fields. Never in my mind was it, and maybe other people had other beliefs of what they thought it was going to be. I've always taken it as it was going to be athletic fields for the school with community access to those fields. I actually asked to have this public hearing in November because I felt like, yes, maybe we didn't have a lot of the information, but I wanted to hear from the public and get their feedback earlier, and now here we are in March. Now the school's under a deadline. We're under fire because we haven't heard from the public and we've dragged our feet, but there were things that this board wanted to see, rightfully so. It's our right to ask for whatever we deem important to know. But, I was always under the impression that this was for the school, for athletic fields. And, however we decide to move forward, if we're going to put more stipulations on this and more, restrictions, we need to really, in my mind, as a former school board member, this land purchase is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for this school. And I would not support buying it out from under them to make it what, the neighbors want or, I think in all fairness, they brought this to us because they wanted athletic fields. And if we're going to put stipulations on it to the point where it can't be what they envisioned it and they want it to be, we need to then say, hey, if this is what you want, you need to make it happen.
Well, just to update you, This had been discussed, I think, prior to you coming on town board, so I can understand your perspective. Originally, Lisa Combrick brought this to us in a very unassuming way, that it was a purchase for CPF for a community park, and we all accepted that on the understanding that it was a community park. Where the change happened, it's not even worth discussing, because the change happened somehow, and that's what we're dealing with
I think it was
now.
always, again, I think I said it before, it was always a community park with an athletic component to it. But I think when they actually put pen to paper, they realized that the lots were just not big enough to do everything they wanted to do, so the school concentrated on that athletic component, and it turned out to be just a field.
Yeah, but there
I
were
think that's kinda
components in
where
it
it's
for
laid.
educating,
Yeah.
for going trail
Just
making.
wasn't
So that's
put
if,
it on.
so if it did come to you guys before I was on the board in January, that's a whole other, I had only seen it as what,
Look, I think both
We-
sides
And
have
that's
acted,
reasonable.
I think both sides have acted in good faith. I don't think there's any bad faith there. I'm not saying that you're implying that there is.
Not at all.
I just, I think that we maybe didn't understand exactly what the school's vision was for the property when we first started talking about it. But then when they
It's
first
clear.
showed us a plan, it was clear that they wanted to use the entirety of those 4 lots, clear cut them and build playing fields. And,
What-
new information has come up about the secret, and that is new. I didn't know that.
Yeah, and their determination, their consultant's determination had it as an unlisted action, in fairness to us. So that's wrong, because of the fact that it's in a National Historic Area. So it's clearly a type 1. And so whether we are in favor of the sports fields or not, we can't do anything until we complete the secret. And it's a minimum, without a POS deck, we're talking at least 2 months. With a POS deck, we're talking minimum eight months.
And
That's
I
where we're at.
appreciate that, Jim.
That's where we're at, that's
I
the bottom line.
appreciate that, because I think that's really important,
Yeah.
because to me, it's not even about athletic fields
Right,
or park.
right.
To me, it's about
We
preserving
have to go
the
through the
integrity
process,
of
and
the
if we pause
CPF.
deck it, then we're gonna have public hearings on the draft environmental impact statement. Everybody will be able to have comments at that time, but that time is
so I mean.
minimum 4 to 6 months
So I
down
just
the
want
road.
to reiterate, because I'm sorry I talked over you. I just wanted to be sure that, understanding from my position, is that I'm trying my best to protect the integrity of the CPF program. And if we don't adhere to that, if we hurt this statute by setting a precedent that we can never recover from, we're hurting a lot of people going on into the future.
Yeah,
And it's
sure.
really important we do this deliberatively, but not under pressure or under
No, we can't.
arbitrary
We have to follow
deadlines.
state law. State law,
But John-
the state law is very clear here.
We have a lot of legal advisors. I've been involved with the CPF program for many, many years now. Ran it for, as supervisor in East Hampton, have been involved with it here in Southampton. I care deeply about this program too. I just want to make sure that clear that I wouldn't want to do anything that would jeopardize the integrity of the program. We're going through an audit.
I don't think anybody on this board would,
It
Jay.
looks like we're getting a relatively perfect audit. It's, this program has been a blessing in many, many ways to the community. It's helped us preserve our open spaces and vistas and access to public access and farmland and historic resources. Nobody wants to see the program hurt in any way.
Well, by saying that, don't imply that somebody does, because I don't think
No,
anybody does
I'm
here.
responding to what you're saying, that you're trying to protect this program, and I don't
That's
think
my
that
perspective
any
as one
of
vote
us-
on this board.
that any of us would want to do something that would jeopardize the program. It's
And
not
that's
just you.
not an implication at all.
Okay.
I've said this from the very beginning, and I'm deeply involved with the CPF program, have been, set up the IA system, did the water quality part of this for this town, and I want to preserve that. And you preserve that by being correct in the process as you go forward. You have to do that.
Yeah.
So
We're
one
all
of the,
agreeing with you, John.
one of the narratives that are being put out in the Sag Harbor community is that a June 28th letter, or a letter that Lisa Combrink had sent from us, was actually an agreement of sort. And that's being kind of played out to the community, that the town board has already agreed to this proposal, when in fact
Right.
it was an offer letter
Right.
to the owner in
Right.
conjunction with the school,
Right.
for
It
that.
starts
Now,
the
now that's important, so,
conversation,
basically. It is.
because a lot of the people in the community just simply don't understand. They think, one, or they've been told, one, that the town board has already approved this, a done deal. They don't understand our process in what we're describing here. And two, they voted on it, and I'll put that in quotes, in November, and it passed 55-45, and so to them, they don't understand it. So our process in our community preservation fund is that we have to hold our public hearings and vote on the expenditure of any purchase in public before the public. We do not do it, in an executive session and then write a letter, an offer letter on a piece of property. That was part of our negotiations early.
Sure,
Right,
that's,
so
that's the start of the process. That's not the end of the process.
So to further complicate this is that concurrently, there was a athletic bond project for Mashhashemewick Park that was running concurrent to this, where most of their athletic fields were going to be placed at the park. It was a $13.5 million bond, which was pulled in September, and then Marsden was put into play as their main athletic complex. So there's a lot of information that crisscrosses and frankly is not accurate information. But we believe in good government. We're going to follow our processes by New York State law, and so that's how we do it.
Yeah, and to be clear, when we send a letter to a property owner, it says very clearly that it's all contingent upon a public hearing. We can't have a public hearing unless we have an agreement from the seller on the price. And so that's really what the heart of the letter is, that, the town, subject to a positive outcome from a public hearing, would be prepared to authorize me to go into contract, to sign a contract, to purchase. And then, of course, there's other contingencies that follow, a clear title, environmental reviews, and things like that. But the letter that you're referring to is really, as Jim said, is sort of the beginning of the process, just making sure that we have enough to actually have a hearing. And there's no assumption at those public hearings of how we will vote. That's the idea of having a public hearing.
Right.
We get input. Usually, 99% of the time, there's no controversy.
Right.
Here, there clearly is controversy. And this is a little bit different. It's, it's a partnership with the school. It's athletic facilities. It's not just preserving woodlands and preventing development. This is different. And I think we perhaps didn't realize the level of controversy, but it clearly is there.
Yeah. And the fact that it's in a historic district, which is, we don't have too many of those actually in our town. So that's the fact that this is a national, it's on the National Registry of the Historic Districts is significant. And
All right, so again, what I'm asking the board here is, if the school consents this evening to a 1 month delay, I mean, it's up to us to adjourn or not to adjourn, but I just want to make sure that you guys would support that, and with the hope, not the expectation, with the hope that it will minimize public comment on Tuesday and allow us to get the answers to our questions so that the public can comment with more information, but also to explore other possible approaches to, the school meeting their needs, as well as community and, the town and the village, and, trying to come up with some other possible approaches here, modifications that would address maybe some of the concerns. Is everybody okay with that?
Well, I'm okay with adjourning. I'm not sure that the consent of the school is required, but I think we need to adjourn because frankly, this councilman has not gotten any of the information that was asked for, and here we are talking about it. So
But it's not an
I will
official
agree
vote, it's just the
to, I
spirit
will
of the
agree to
board.
an adjournment. I think it's necessary. Not only, it's not really up to anybody else. I think it's up to the law.
And we're not voting on adjourning right now.
No, but I'm
all it
saying-
would be is, I could then say to the school that the town board would like to see it adjourned for a month.
And that's fine.
And there will be those who want to speak, and
Yeah, absolutely.
we're not going to prevent them from speaking. So,
We can't, we
Right.
have to open it, but I could tell them that the board is intending to adjourn it for a month. So,
I think regardless, we're gonna have a big crowd, so we could say yes, but there's still tons of people
Right.
lining up.
Yeah,
understand
because
that.
there's no additional information since the last meeting that we can add to this process. So,
I just think there's, as of the last public hearing, there was a lot of things added to this that we're asking them for that, you know, are required, and it's kind of like the ball's back in their court as to what they decide is best. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, they brought this to us to partnership with them. If we're not going to partnership with them, or we can't for various reasons, I think it needs to go back to them to do with as they wish, because, like I said, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for the school
no,
district.
but clearly, we cannot take a vote on this matter for at least 2 months, and possibly not.
And that's what I'm saying, like,
6
they
to 8
need to,
months.
they need to weigh that themselves and decide if they even want to move forward with us.
So-
If we're putting, you know, if it's gonna be subject to the village and
Right.
we're gonna have to do all of this work, so, you know, they might come to us and say,
Well, and if that's the case, or if the school's looking at other possibilities, then who benefits from having another contentious hearing? I don't know. Though I know people feel like they haven't been heard and they want to be heard. I can't stop them from voicing that. And, you know, there's a lot of voices on both sides of this issue. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
All
I
right?
think the important point,
I don't know
like-
what more we can say here,
Yeah.
other than,
I think the important point, Mr. Supervisor, is what you said, is that this board is not going to be ready to make a decision, regardless of whether we may feel, like I said, we may love the sports field, we might say, yes, this is what we want to do. We're not going to be able to do it probably for 8 months, probably, at a minimum. If we pause that, and it looks like that's the way we're going to go. And clearly, it's a type 1, and again, you know, so at a minimum, we're talking about 2 to 3 months. If we pause that, then it's 8 months, at minimum. You know, and we'll have public hearings during that process. So. But that's the word that should be out to the public, is that
Now,
this
the
board
the
cannot
school
make-
has performed a secret, and their determination was it was an unlisted.
Right, which
I
was.
mean, that's something that, because of, you know, what we've learned and what we
Yeah.
know of this property, we don't agree with that.
Right, that's incorrect,
There-
yeah. It's clear, that's clearly incorrect. There's no question.
Construction debris
okay, so,
on a dump
all right, well, thank you.
with
So,
children. Okay.
anyway, that's sort of my hope, that we're able to adjourn it. Okay, so we're gonna just go through the resolutions here.
45.
I know, I already read that one.
Did you read some?
About the marijuana,
Number
yeah.
two.
I did. But then I went back to number 6. All right, so,
long night.
and I have no idea how many people are coming out to talk about the zoning for cannabis. There could be a lot of people, maybe not. Okay, so I guess, John, you've got the first resolution. You want to give it a read?
Town Board Resolution ID 242686, accept award and authorize the supervisor to execute any and all documents with the Peconic Estuary Partnership to develop a wetland restoration concept plan in the hamlet of Riverside.
Town Board Resolution ID 42742, authorized purchase and installation of 2 Quonset huts from Eagle Associates, an authorized dealer of Brightspan Building Systems Incorporated, using the Sourcewell contract. Town Board Resolution ID 42700, authorized purchase asphalt and bituminous materials, sand and stone aggregate, topsoil mulch, disposal of road metal, using Suffolk County contracts. Town Board Resolution ID 42649, authorized purchase of reflective sign faces and materials using the Town of Huntington contracts. Town Board Resolution 42744, authorized purchases of lab analysis of sewage, industrial waste, and receiving water from Pace Analytical Services Incorporated using the Suffolk County contract.
Thank you. And I'm also not going to read co-sponsors in the interest of saving time here. 42724, authorize supervisor to sign a contract with Hampton Hopper LLC for South Fork Community Connection Shuttle Services.
Town Board Resolution ID 42738, authorize supervisor to sign applications and contracts with Suffolk County for the financial support of Youth Bureau programming and activities.
Town Board Resolution ID 42728, authorize supervisor to sign mortgage satisfactions on community development block grant home improvement loans. Town Board Resolution 42726, authorizes purchase from Dale Concrete Corp. for a concrete pad at North Sea Skate Park from a Suffolk County DPW contract. Town Board Resolution ID 42729, authorize the purchase of skate park equipment and installation services at North Sea Skate Park from a Sourcewell contract with American Ramp Company.
Town Board Resolution 42747, authorize the supervisor to execute the 2023 Parks and Recreation Agreement with John Ford.
42714, authorize me to execute a 23 support agreement with MRI Software for the Town of Southampton Housing Authority for the administration of the Southampton Town Housing Authority Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program.
Town Board Resolution 42721, authorize the supervisor to execute a lease agreement with the Suffolk County Office for the Aging for a 12-passenger bus.
Town Board Resolution ID 42748, authorize the supervisor to execute an intermunicipal agreement with the Village of West Hampton Beach related to historic landmark designation, preservation, and stewardship of the Governor's John Adam Dix Windmill.
Town Board Resolution ID 42751, authorize the supervisor to execute a professional engineering services contract with H2M Architects, Engineers, Land Surveying, ATAL for Rampasture Road Water Main.
Town Board Resolution 42722, authorize the supervisor to renew the town's maintenance agreement with Printer Logic Incorporated, FKA, Max Vault LLC, for Max Cloud and Max Clerk.
Town Board Resolution ID 42668, authorize the supervisor to sign a contract extension for closed top-shelf contained ejector trailer with hydraulic roof opening from Spectre Manufacturing Incorporated.
Town Board Resolution ID 42718, award and authorize supervisor to sign an extended contract for full-depth reclamation with Rosemar Contracting Incorporated.
42682 authorizes me to sign a contract for printing of envelopes with Dan Printing. The next one, 42182, authorizes me to sign a contract for requirements, contract, security camera network infrastructure maintenance.
Town Board Resolution 42648, declare item surplus and authorize disposal of computer equipment. Town Board Resolution 42723, recall and amend Resolution 2022-72, authorizing the supervisor to sign a maintenance and service agreement for the broadcasting equipment and software for Southampton Channel 20.
Town Board Resolution ID 42746 is a 2023 notice to bidders for 2022 Ford F-250 Super Duty, and there's an amendment that needs to be made.
Well, not an amendment, but a change. Go ahead.
Amend the due date from March 31st to April 5th,
Which one is this?
under the notice of bidders.
Page 25.
Take notice, 25,
It should say what day?
April 5th,
Wednesday, April 5th?
correct. No, whatever day of the week that is. I believe it's Wednesday.
No, it can't
It
be.
is a Wednesday.
It is, thank you.
I'm going to try and
You
speak
sure?
with them about staggering these
If
a little
Wednesday,
bit.
Yeah.
if
There's a
March,
lot being opened on one day, and it's
if
very
March
hard.
31st is a Wednesday, how could April 5th be a Wednesday? It's
I'm
only
looking
6
at the
days away.
calendar.
The Wednesday was correct, the March 31st was incorrect.
It went correct.
So March 31st is not a Wednesday, it must be a Thursday. All right. Got it. Sunday, you got that?
It's April 5th, just to be clear.
April 5th, Wednesday, April 5th, okay.
Town Board Resolution 42701, the 2023 notice to bidders for mobile concession at Red Creek Park, Hampton Bays.
Have we had concessions there before? Was this,
It's a mobile, yeah, they stop in.
they do?
For years,
It's like an ice
yeah.
cream truck or
Yep.
something?
Hot dogs, ice cream.
Hot dog, okay.
Town Board Resolution ID 42704, the 2023 notice to bidders for mobile food truck concessions at Good Ground Park, Hampton Bays.
And we're allowed to have food trucks, I guess, on certain occasions, right? It's not-
Special events, and we also have the next one, which is an ice cream truck. So 42705, the 2023 notice to bidders for mobile ice cream concession for Good Ground Park, Hampton Bays.
Town Board Resolution ID 42743 is a 2023 notice to bidders for invasive vegetative control and removal.
Town Board Resolution 42717, the 2023 notice to bidders for a used 2021 F-150.
Town Board Resolution 42745, a notice to bidders for a 2023 Silverado 1500 Crew RST four-wheel drive.
The next one's 42707. It's amending the 23 budget for various departments. It's a housekeeping resolution.
Town Board Resolution ID 42750, authorize funding for IA septic rebates for 2022 from Water Quality Grant Award for Lake Agawam Stormwater Management. And just a comment on this, we've needed to roll money over because our IA program is becoming so successful. So it's actually good news. Town Board Resolution ID 42708, amend the 2023 to 2027 capital budget and add capital project Riverside Wetland Restoration Concept Plan.
42719 amends the 23 to 27 capital program for prior funding projects. This is just the rolling forward amounts from 22 to 23 based on, what has been spent or not spent. If you have questions, I'm happy to answer. 42690, authorize purchase order encumbrances from 2022 to 2023. That also, if things were ordered in '22, but haven't been paid, there's sort of like a 60-day window. This sort of encumbers that money from '22 to pay those bills, rather than having it go to reserve. 42727 accepts resignation of Ramona Alpert from the ARB. She's been a great member.
She really has.
Really talented architect, real keen design sense, but also has been working here and in New York and finding, I think, more time in New York in terms of her architecture work and making it hard to be available for the ARB. But that's too bad, but we'll have an appointment then to the ARB. John, you're next.
Town Board Resolution 42688, appoint the Sustainable Southampton Green Advisory Committee for 2023.
42643 authorizes the town to reimburse New York, or NYMER, the deductible for bodily injury and property damage claims. 42692, authorize the settlement of the litigation matter Olivo, doing business as Southampton Jewelry Exchange, and Salvador Olivo versus the town of Southampton et al. 42684, recall and amend town board number 251, should say resolution number, town board, maybe we can add the word reso, number 2023-251 as it relates to NYMER deductible reimbursements.
Town Board Resolution ID 42619, resolution of adoption amending Chapter 312 to authorize stop signs at the intersection of Wakeman Road and Gardenia Road in Hampton Bays, New York. Town Board Resolution 42618, resolution of adoption amending Chapter 312 to authorize stop signs at King Street and Gerald Lane in Hampton Bays, New York.
Now, have we held those hearings, or those are on?
Those are on for that.
Those are on for that day, so we'll have to close the hearing to make those eligible. 42562, resolution of adoption amending the town code to add special exemption standards for living quarters for golf course employees. So this is one where I think we have closed the hearing and we've closed the comment period. So there are some changes here. Took out one of the clauses that would have said that anyone who had received prior planning board approval would be exempted, which really only applied, I think, to Atlantic Golf Course. And this doesn't exempt them. They will still have to demonstrate to the planning board that they meet these special exemption standards. Other than that, I don't know that there are any other changes from what was originally, let me just make sure. Yeah, there's no exemption provision here. All right, any questions on that? You guys vote however you want to vote. Cindy, you're next.
Town Board Resolution 42720, memorializing resolution supporting affordable housing while still preserving local authority within the town of Southampton.
So that is,
Just reinforcing. our
that's
home-
based on the governor's,
3% increase in municipalities arbitrarily. I totally
oh, no,
agree
no,
with
which
it.
one is it? Remember, this is the 0.5%. Yeah, no, yeah, this is,
States everything we've
Means
done.
it's home rule still, we
Yes.
hold it to be dear to us.
Yes. This was supported by the Association of Towns.
okay. John, you're next.
Town Board Resolution ID 42642, authorization of cost reimbursement waiver for the Southampton Elks Carnival from May 12th to May 14th, 2023, and May 19th to May 21st, 2023.
Like to be added to that one, please?
Absolutely.
42694 authorizes town planning and development administrator to provide a letter of authorization to the DEC in connection with the restoration of wetlands on a town-owned property. 42659 accepts a maintenance bond in connection with Hampton Business District, Kabreski APDD at 230 Rogers Way. 42706 accepts a maintenance bond in connection with site plan of 2331 Montauk LLC, Bridgehampton 42282, 2023 part-time salaries. 42735 accepts resignation of Eden Teska, office assistant in town clerk's office. 42687 accepts resignation of William Mundy, records management assistant in town clerk's office. 42137 accepts retirement of Barbara Ippoliti, account clerk in highway. 41852 accepts retirement of Deborah Dillon, secretary assistant in land management. 42529 accepts retirement of Nathaniel Roach, labor crew leader in highway. 42658 appoints Jacqueline Fenelon to Community Preservation Fund Manager in Community Preservation. 42571 appoints Joan DeVal to Associate Administrator in Community Preservation.
42739, authorize Fire Marshals Christian Hansen and Ryan White to attend the International Association of Arson Investigators Fire Fatality Investigations course in Toms River, New Jersey, on May 23rd, 2023.
42697, notice of public hearing to consider the acceptance of an agricultural and scenic easement and a drainage easement in connection with the subdivision application of M4 Lumber Holdings, LLC in Bridgehampton.
Town Board Resolution ID 42631, notice of public hearing to consider amending Town Code, Chapter 312, Vehicles and Traffic, to authorize the installation of stop signs at 2 intersections in the hamlet of Spionk-Remsenburg.
I'd like to be added to that.
42741, notice of public hearing to consider the acquisition of lands of Jill Rappaport, 427 Little Noyak Path in the hamlet of Watermill, New York. John?
No, it's a long one. Town Board Resolution ID 42693, the notice of public hearing to accept the deed of residual fee from Joseph F. Gaza. The property to be maintained as open space located at North Sea, Suffolk County Tax Map as indicated on the resolution pursuant to Southampton Town Code 244-4, obtaining a development right certificate and Chapter 247 General Municipal Law of the State of New York.
We have an add-on, as you all see.
Do I have that? Oh, yep.
Okay, that's 42740. This is a technology usage policy and procedures update.
All right.
address our changing board.
All right, so does anybody have any other questions regarding the draft agenda? All right, Cindy, you have the corrections and you're good to publish. All right, so, all right, we're gonna move on to our next item. Thank you for your patience, we're running about 25 minutes behind. So we are moving on to CCA, Outreach and Electric Energy Supply, RFP.
Thank you,
We are
Cindy.
joined by a number of individuals. Here, let me pass, I got one more of these. You don't need it? Okay, we're joined by a number of individuals, including Deputy Supervisor Frank Sapone, our town engineer in the back, Tom Houghton, Lynn Arthur from the Town Sustainability Committee, Glenn Weinberg from Jewel Associates, our CCA Administrator. And I guess, Frank, you're gonna kick this off?
I'm going to do the kicking, yes. Good morning, Town Board. Frank Sapone, Deputy Supervisor.
I didn't mention you, did I? I did, okay.
Mike Gordon.
Mike, I didn't mention Mike.
This meeting is a meeting that was postponed from February 28th. So it's an opportunity to have it sooner rather than later, and I think a critical opportunity for us to have it now because we've approached what I think is a very significant milestone with regard to CCA. Since the majority of the board members were not here in 2018 when we passed the legislation, I just want to give a brief overview and Glenn, when he
A majority was
presents. Pardon?
A majority was here.
Well,
Three.
Rick wasn't here. Were you here
Yes,
in 18?
yes.
Oh,
Yeah. No,
my
Frank,
my
I'm just-
apologies, Tom John.
Go on.
A simple
It's
majority.
hard,
Doing some
it's hard to keep
counting to three
track
here.
of all the
Yeah.
changing faces.
That's true.
But it is an important decision, and we've reached a critical milestone. When we passed the legislation enabling CCA in 2018, we were well aware as a town that the landscape on Long Island that allowed for CCA was not favorable. LIPA had not even passed the CCA tariff, which was approved by the state in 2016, so that we knew we had a number of hurdles to overcome, but felt confident that we could overcome them. I do want to mention one thing which is I find often confusing to people. It's the use of the word tariff. And tariff in most people's minds equates to some kind of a tax or a fee. In this case, a tariff is more of a procedural guideline, how things are going to work. So when you hear that term, especially for the public, it's not about taxing anybody. It's about setting out a set of rules how a certain element will behave when put into practice. We've had an enormous amount of help in the effort over the last couple of years. First and foremost from our CCA administrator, Jewel Assets, and Mr. Gordon, who's the founder and chief strategic officer, is here today, and of course Glenn. And I think we might be joined by two others, but I'm not sure, via Zoom. Jessica Strombach and Hannah Karp, who are other members of that same team.
They're coming in.
Thank you, Charles. I also want to take note to thank Councilman Bouvier, whose support for this effort and his leadership on this effort is one of the key factors that brought us to the decision point that we have today, in front of us today. And I also want to thank Assemblyman Thiel, who's not only his support, but his legislative activity over the past couple of years has really been a significant factor in moving LIPA forward with the changes they needed to make.
Just thank you for that, but it's a huge group of people, yourself
Well,
included,
yeah,
and
and-
Len, and Mike, and Glenn, and Eric, a whole bunch of people, so, but thank you.
Thank you, John. I know the board is running behind schedule, so it's like accepting the Academy Award. When do you stop thanking people?
Start the music soon?
Without the award.
But one of the most significant hurdles that was overcome was just overcome in January of this year, when LIPA reached the point where they could allowed for what's called a single, what's it, I've lost the
Consolidated
term.
utility billing. Yeah, consolidated.
Consolidated billing. So that's an important factor of the CCA program and how the participants in the program, particularly the ratepayers, what they're going to see on their bill and how easy it is for them to determine what they're getting if we enter into a CCA program. So without too much more speak from me, I want to introduce Glenn. I have a slide presentation that Glenn prepared, which I'll put up on the screen. You have a paper copy of that slide presentation, and there'll be some time for, obviously, for questions and answers as we get to the end. But I'm going to run up that slide and then turn the meeting over to Mr. Weinberg.
And I'm going to steal it from Glenn for just a second, because I've taken some notes on what we have done together, and it really has been together. So I'm just going to go through some of them. Frank was describing some of the foundational necessities that we built together. For instance, the quote-unquote tariff, the consolidated bill. These are things that have happened because of our work together. But the other thing is that in the interim, we've accomplished a good deal while we are building that foundation. And I'm just taking a look. I think in January, you're going to have a meeting later today on a separate issue. The capped landfill will provide guaranteed savings for 20 years for 500 families. And that's something that was built from Southampton's initiative that we built together.
Wasn't it 1,000 families we're gonna benefit, or
I think
1,000
I'm being
individuals?
conservative. It might be 750, it might end up being
There's a certain,
750.
there's a bundle of money, and then you'll have the opportunity later at another meeting to
decide.
decide, do you want to give $200 to 500 people, or do you want to give $100 to 1,000 people? I mean, that's
Oh, that's a decision for us.
for us
yes.
later, yeah.
So I was
See
being
who the
conservative.
beneficiary group is, so, okay.
And I
just
think
have
also,
remembered the 1,000 number, so.
and I think also, yeah, sorry, John.
2,000 if you have to.
And I think we've also changed LIPA's approach pretty foundationally, so that it's not just the tariff, but we are now working with, it looks like we'll be working with LIPA, the federal government encouraged LIPA to move ahead on an application for $250 million of grid upgrade funding. And it looks as if we are going to be working collaboratively with LIPA on that endeavor. And let's see, we passed 2 bills. The governor signed them. We have taken a look at and analyzed 361 potentially viable sites for the community to provide resilience resources for the community. And now, at this point, the foundation is in place due to many of those other things that we've done to provide, to move forward on, to achieve, deliver on the community's goals to go for 100% renewable power with price protection for residents. And I think it's remarkable what we've done together, and a really good opportunity right at this moment. And so I am now turning over to
Can I just ask you a question on the capped landfill and the solar? In addition to the reduction for those individuals that we designate, there's also revenue, there's got to be some sort of ground lease for the town, right? So we're
Yep.
receiving money that will help every taxpayer, correct?
We have an item on your agenda of your next meeting to discuss that, because it's a confidential legal advice related to that contract, so we can address that question.
Right, but,
yes,
but there is a fee that we're charging the company that's building the solar
absolutely.
to
Yeah.
be on our landfill.
The simple answer is yes.
Yeah, and that, by the way, is replicable. But you know what? I do not want to, want to turn over to the supply
Yeah.
piece because I'm going to get in trouble should I sidetrack.
No, but it is, because the community solar and what we're here to talk about today, which is electricity, renewable electricity supply, they're two programs of a larger initiative, that under the CCA umbrella. It's important to keep them distinct and understand sort of, how does A work and how does B work. But they work together, dynamically. So we want to make sure that we're talking about both, but also today we really want to focus on the electricity supply component, which is at sort of a kind of a new beginning moment, and I'll talk about sort of why that is and what that means. So let's see.
We have it here, but not there.
Oh, okay. As long as I can see what. Yeah, so we can bless you.
Bless you.
So we can go on to the, Frank, you have the deck?
We're good, you're good on here.
Yeah, but it's giving me some
It's
grief.
gonna
Oh.
restart. I'll wait for that, because there's people at home, maybe, right?
There we go.
Okay, great. So as Frank mentioned, we've been working with the town for several years, but some of the, not a majority, a minority, but nonetheless, I believe two of the board members were not here then, so important just to sort of introduce ourselves. Mike and myself are from Jewel Community Power. We are a community choice aggregator and program administrator in New York State. We represent, I think it's 56 now municipalities in New York State. Nearly 1 million New Yorkers, New York residents, live in municipalities that we represent. And nearly all of them are interested in the same thing that the town of Southampton is, which is renewable electricity supply at competitive rates. To date, the contracts that have been entered into by those municipalities have performed quite well. Last year in 2022, our customers saved over $12 million. That there's no guarantee that same performance will be replicated in 23, 24 and beyond, but the historical precedent is quite strong. Long Island, of course, is essentially a new market, and so the reason why it's taken from 2018 to today, where we are ready to say we can move forward and we have a path, is largely related to the tariff work that Frank mentioned, and that the town, in collaboration with Jewel, has shown exceptional leadership to really push LIPA to get to this point. It's a remarkable achievement because LIPA has been historically, as you guys, I don't have to tell you, they have been a sort of business as usual status quo utility, as most utilities are. So to get them to move them off of that spot and get them to accept a new paradigm, A, with CCA, and to significantly amend their tariff, B, which they now have in multiple, over the course of multiple phases, to the point now where we say there is now a clear path to procure renewable electricity supply at competitive rates for Long Islanders, for residents of the town of Southampton, that will compete and perform comparably to LIPA rates, is really actually in itself a really critical step. But Jewel ourselves, we're really committed to accessing clean energy markets again at competitive rates for those customer classes that have historically been sort of left behind, left out of electricity market participation. And those are the small customers, the residential and small commercial customers. By aggregating that demand and bringing those large groups of customers out to market as if they were a very large customer. Large customers have had access to these sorts of mechanisms for decades. Small customers are just now starting to get access. And like I said, in the 5 or so years that CCA has been active in New York, they've shown strong results in terms of customer savings and also renewable content as well. So we can go to the next one. I want to point out here that the state has very aggressive goals, right, which are now law, right, the CLCPA. 70% renewable by 2030, 100% carbon-free, which includes nuclear, by 2040, and 10 gigawatts. I know a gigawatt is one of these, but that's a lot of solar, distributed solar by 2030. So these are very strong targets, and they are matched by the very strong targets that you have set in the town of Southampton. 100% renewable energy by 2025. We've mentioned already the landfill solar project, which is, as Mike said, just the first. There are many other viable sites in the town that could follow, right? This could be the beginning of the sort of pilot, I don't want to use the P word, but the sort of first of several projects that the town could pursue for both solar and storage, battery storage. And many other initiatives that the town has taken to advance the clean energy goals. And it's in lockstep with the state's goals. And CCA is sort of the marriage of the two, right? CCA is a policy created and authorized at the state level to enable and empower the local, right? The local governments and the communities to take control over their energy decision-making and their sourcing, to access greater renewables and to also stabilize pricing as well. Okay, so we can move on. You can sort of, there's animations, I think, but you can just kind of press them all, Frank. Yeah, that's, I think, all of them. So again, just a very basic, I don't want to take too much time on this. I know you're already behind schedule, but
It's okay.
what is CCA, just the basics. This is a state regulated policy that enables local governments, cities, towns, and villages to determine the default energy offerings on behalf of their residents and small businesses. So today, that's LIPA PSEG, right? That's your default supplier. And although Long Island is a bit of an exceptional case when it comes to utility franchise, that's true everywhere in the state. So everywhere in the state, your default energy supplier is also your distribution utility. So where I live, Con Ed, and elsewhere in the state, other utilities. CCA says that shouldn't be a state decision of who the default supplier is. That can be a local decision, right? The city, town, or village can say, we're looking for renewable electricity, we're looking for fixed pricing, we're looking for a long-term stability, all sorts of other benefits that the utility actually is not permitted to offer. So LIPA cannot offer a fixed price the same way that a CCA can, and they don't offer an enhanced renewable product customized at the local level that CCA can offer. So it's a policy that shifts that decision-making and that authority from the state level to the local. It is designed, to give that flexibility. You can use it for all sorts of, to meet all sorts of goals or objectives, but it has been primarily used in New York State and in other states, and primarily by our clients as well, to access greater renewable generation as their default supply. And last but not least, it allows the locality, in conjunction with a consultant, to develop a contract, to write the rules of the road, and to allow the supply industry to come and compete over that business, right? There's enough aggregated demand right here in the town to dictate the terms of your own purchasing. So rather than a sort of retail offering, which retail energy is like any other retail market, where the suppliers simply say, here, this is the price, these are the terms, take it or leave it. CCA, it allows the town to write that contract, the town to write that RFP. This is what we're looking for. This is how long we want it. This is the price that we're willing to buy it at. These are the rules. We want these renewable sources. We want these customer protections. We want free opt-out for all customers, opt-in and opt-out at any point in the contract. All of these features, which are sort of standard for CCA, but are not standard for the industry, right? And that's what CCA, the power in aggregated demand that CCA gives you. We can move on to the next one. Again, there's a couple animations there. Yeah, I think that's all of it. And again, we are primarily a clean energy company, right? We have vast experience in energy procurement and markets, which allows us to act as your representative and your agent in these solicitations. But primarily, we have a mission to deliver clean energy for all New Yorkers. So CCA, in terms of why pursue CCA, you can shift your whole community from fossil fuel, which Lynn was just saying outside LIPA service territory right now is 97% fossil. So you can go from 97% fossil to virtually 100% renewable in one contract, right? Now there is a roadmap, there's a process, and we'll talk a little bit about that, and of course, if you have any questions about that. So there's steps that you need to take to get there. It's regulated at the state level, and this is what we do, right? We navigate that process for you. But if you get to the end of that, if you get to the finish line of that process, it's in one transaction, you can go from 97 fossil to 100% renewable. Okay, I think we can go to the next. Here, I just want to point out, which is where we started, and Mike said, going to get in trouble, that really, you can think of this program, as a toolbox with two central tools in it. One, which is what we're focusing on today, is renewable electricity supply at stabilized rates, free opt-out at any time to support both new and existing renewable resources around the state, and especially new builds here in Long Island. And the second is community choice solar. So CCA also allows the town to pursue community solar, as you have already done with the North Sea landfill, and can continue to do, to actually access guaranteed savings for any resident that subscribes to that any community solar farm, whether it be the town farm or any other farm in Long Island. And that's really critical. These two are not, you don't have to choose A or B. They do not cannibalize each other. They don't compete with each other. They don't steal from each other. A single customer can take advantage both of the 100% renewable electricity at a stabilized rate and a community solar subscription. So they could be one of those 500 or 1,000 families taking advantage of the guaranteed savings at the North Sea landfill, and also take advantage of the benefits of the electricity supply contract. You get the benefit of both. That's how New York has set it up. So it's really, again, it's like two rooms in the same house. It's important to keep them separate and understand the features of both, but they are hand in glove. Okay. So the question of why now? Why are we here now after several years of work and development work in conjunction with the town and with LIPA? Why now? So I just want to take through, I won't take too long on this, but it's been, as you see, I lost my, there it is. Okay. It's been a stepwise process, especially for LIPA to get here. It started before this, right? But it really started in January of 22. LIPA first amended their retail choice tariff. This is what allows competition. So New York State has had competition for about 20 years. Long Island has had very limited competition. It's only in the last year or so that LIPA has really taken steps to open that up. And then January of this year, as Frank mentioned, they really took the final critical step, in our view, to allow for what's called consolidated billing. So a CCA supplier or any supplier can put their charges on LIPA's bill. So if you or I sign up for an ESCO today, even outside of CCA, that now, as of January of this year, that means that ESCO can put their charges on your LIPA bill, and you get one bill in the mail. You pay one bill just as you normally would instead of two. This is a really critical change for CCA because the idea here is to make this as seamless and as simple for consumers as possible. So we don't want consumers to get a second bill that they don't understand, right? We want it all to take place right there on the LIPA bill. So that's really the step to say, why are we here in February, March of 2023? It's because in January of 23, LIPA has finally taken this step, again, in large part because of the advocacy of people in this room, including all yourselves and Lynn and Mike and Frank, to get to this point. So, so with that, we propose a timeline, which really starts, on your go-ahead, to get through that regulatory, process, which starts with a 2-month outreach and education process, right? Which we propose to start really as soon as you're ready. And after that that's going to be events, signage, social media posts, ads, local press, radio spots, a sort of all of the above approach to reach as many residents as possible so that as many people in the town know that this is happening. And this is still very much an exploratory process. The message there is not the town is doing this. The message there is the town is exploring a program that could bring benefit, and they want to know they want you to know about it, and they want to know what you think, right? So this is an exploratory process to solicit feedback and to educate the public. It is not a fait accompli by any stretch. So I just want you to understand that the decision point for the town comes much later. After that outreach and education phase, we would issue an RFP to suppliers. Now, we've been prepping the suppliers for months on this because we've been seeing this coming and seeing the progress. So they're already starting on the work that they need to do. This is essentially a new market for them, right? Even though it's in the state of New York, it's essentially like a new state opening up. So there's all sorts of considerations there on the supply side. But they're well underway, and they know our plans in terms of timeline, and they're going to be ready. So when we issue a bid in June, that they'll be prepared to respond to that bid with competitive pricing for renewable supply. The hope is to award and execute that contract about the second week of July. And then in the fall, begin the enrollment period, which means that everybody in town is going to get a letter in the mail. Every eligible customer in town is going to get a letter in the mail saying the town is moving forward with this program. Here are your options. Here are the rates. Here's how they compare to LIPA's rates. Here's who the new supplier will be. It's renewable, or it's from here or from there. And if you want to participate, you can do nothing. And if you would like not to participate, you can opt out with any of these 3 ways. And that is to return a prepaid postcard that comes with that mailing, to call a toll-free number, which we staff Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, or to go online and fill out a simple form. So they have those opportunities to opt out before the program ever starts. No data will ever be shared. They won't be moved. Nothing will happen to them, and they will have that opportunity. And even though that there's a 2-month outreach and education period that's regulated, the outreach and education persists throughout the life of the program. So we're always there to answer questions, to do additional education in the town so that people understand what their options are and what the impacts of their choices are. And then the goal is to actually start, meaning that people's bills will reflect the new supply in January of next year. So I might want to stop there just because this is a kind of an important slide.
You want to send that to me so I can manage that computer?
Oh, well,
You don't
because it
have to.
keeps doing the thing.
Yeah, it's up to you.
Yeah, I don't know what it's doing there.
Gentlemen, I will be stepping away, but rest assured I will be watching the rest of your presentation online, and conceptually I fully support what we are doing. And I remember it from 2018.
Let's take some questions.
Sure.
Let me start. So the contract we have with you as our CCA administrator is sort of predicated on delivering a lower cost utility for our residents, and hopefully with a larger renewable component than we currently get. And I know we had these roadblocks that we seem to have overcome, where it wasn't even authorized in this area where we had this public or quasi-governmental entity, LIPA.
Yeah.
And we've gotten past those hurdles, it's gotten authorized. But, when I had met with Tom Falcone, who's the head of LIPA, it sounded like that there were all these fees that they were throwing in the way of,
Yeah.
you know, oh, we're gonna have to change our computers and our billing system, so we're gonna have to charge you for that.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to charge some sort of administrative pass-through, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, wow, I don't know how this is ever gonna be able to happen in a way where the final bill, because that's what we said, that not what you're
Yeah.
paying for the electricity, but what our ratepayers are paying with all in, had to be, you know, lower than what they were paying,
Yeah.
you know, historically. And I know you guys do a power purchase agreement that's over an extended period of time, and it's the same rate, let's say for 2 years, same kilowatt price. So I just kind of wanted to sort of check where we are with those pass-throughs.
Yeah.
Has there been any movement there with LIPA in terms of, you know, them not killing this or making it impossible to?
Yeah, and I didn't delve into the details of that, but that's exactly what they've done, is they have cleared the brush on a number of these hurdles. So they have so first, they have accepted the community choice aggregation tariff that the rest of the utilities in New York State have had for 6 years or whatever it is. First, LIPA accepted that, right, to even make CCA possible. So that was a very important step, but necessary but not sufficient. Right? Then they actually have rearranged, and maybe Mike, you want to speak to this a little bit more. They have rearranged the way their charges are bundled, supply and with respect to supply and delivery, to eliminate some of those additional fees and redundancies that the old retail choice. So there has been competition on Long Island. It's been only a commercial program, and even then, I think now there's almost nobody using it anyway. It's been basically provide very little value to customers. That is in part because of the way the tariff was written. The retail choice, the competitive tariff, was written at the outset with LIPA, which was this funky thing with true-ups, and, you know, it was like no other, you know, it's like a, you know, just an anomaly. They have since now adjusted that to be more aligned with what most utilities around the country have as their retail choice program, where there's supply charges that are separate from delivery charges. The delivery charges, for the most part, are a monopoly, non-bypassable. The supply charges are supposed to be primarily competitive and allow suppliers to come in and compete with the utility supply on an apples-to-apples basis. So we've gotten very close to that. We haven't gotten all the way there, right? So there are still some sort of relics of the old system. And I don't know, Mike, if you want to speak to that.
Well, so in your
Yeah.
timeline, where you go from issuing the RFP to awarding the contract, I mean, somewhere there's got to be this analysis after we see the prices that the various ESCOs are going to provide. We need to have that reconciled sort of with LIPA to find out what the actual billing is before we decide that, yes, we will award. You know, I want to make sure that we're
Yeah.
not bound to award a contract until we're confident that it actually is a lower price.
Precisely. So that's our job,
So
right?
I was just looking, I didn't see the line up there where it said,
Well, yeah, this is a very high-level timeline, but
Yeah.
yes, that's part of the analysis that we bring to you, is we say, look, this is what the bids that we're getting. And by the way, you know, and we've done this before multiple times, where if the indicative pricing, the bids that we're seeing are not providing value vis-a-vis what the utility
Yeah,
rates
reject
have
them
been
all.
or we expect to be, we'll make the recommendation to wait. Or,
Right.
you know, or to adjust to do something, not simply take whatever
Right.
is given. But that's absolutely part of it, is here's what LIPA's charges have been, here's what LIPA's all in with everything in, so it's apples to apples, here's what we expect them to be going forward, and here's what we're seeing from the competitive market. And if there's value there, we'll make a recommendation to move forward, and if we're not seeing value there, we won't make that.
okay.
And that's the whole basis of CCA, was to be able to lower those rates or give rates to people that made sense. If it didn't make sense, we weren't gonna
Yeah.
go forward. And
Right.
That's part of this whole
Exactly.
analysis.
So I had a,
Yeah, and I have a couple other questions, so could I just finish
Yeah,
one
go ahead.
question, unless your question is on the same issue? So I just sort of, your company has been involved with, as you said, like 150, whatever, CCAs, or quite a number in New York. What is your experience in two regards? One, with these companies, these ESCOs that promise to be renewable, like you said, you can go from 97% fossil fuel to 100% renewable. What role do you play to make sure that the company is actually using renewable resources and not just pretending to be renewable? And do you have any
A
experience?
lot of our day. So there are institutions and rules and protocols that New York State has put in place for the accounting of renewable energy. That was not true 6-7 years ago, by the way. This is fairly new. There is today, there is a full-scale tracking system. Well, it's not perfect, but every megawatt hour of renewable energy, electricity generated in New York is to be tracked, whether that means it's consumed on site, whether it means it's exported to Massachusetts, whether it means it's sent down to New York City, whatever it may be, it's tracked, and there is a custody trail, right? A generator, a customer, and a retirement on behalf of a customer, right? And often some entities in between too. So it's very complex. But this is so a big part of the RFP process is a conversation with those suppliers. Where are you getting your renewables? How are you documenting that? At what price? How can we be sure you have enough? All of that. And I'll say that, when CCA started, not to say it was the wild, wild west, but there were a lot less of these ways of tracking, first of all, and B, there was a lot more availability. The demand for renewable energy, as you might imagine, in New York State has gone up considerably over the last 3, 4, 5 years, right? So now scarcity and availability is an issue too. So it's not just, hey, how do we make sure you're delivering renewables, but it's also, how do we make sure you have enough, right? It's not good enough to just say, oh, we'll get them, right? In the bid process. We want to know from where. Do you have a line of sight? Do you have a contract lined up to supply the amount of volume that the town needs, right? And so that's a very critical conversation that goes on, really.
Right. And so you go to energy suppliers, could be anywhere. Could be in northern New York State, Buffalo region, Rochester, or whatever. They are putting the electricity commensurate to the amount of our consumption into the grid. So even though we're not using those electrons, we're taking out a similar amount that they're putting in, sort of like if, we had a giant swimming pool,
Yeah.
and I take out a bucket of water at this end, and somebody at the other end pours a bucket of water in, the water level remains constant. I'm not getting those atoms,
Yeah.
those water molecules
Yeah.
in my bucket. However, it's a calculation basically overall.
Yeah.
So, and the other question I wanted to make sure, so let's say we get a really good competitive bid, right? And they say, we're gonna give you for the next 2 years, or whatever the period is, we're gonna charge you per, electrical input, a certain fixed price, a kilowatt, whatever it is. And what if their costs go up? And now they say, no, I can't honor this agreement. Can't honor this agreement where we're not going to do it. Like, so what does your company do in that case where we've got this great deal for our ratepayers, but you've picked an ESCO that says, you know what, we're going to go out of business or whatever it is, or we're not going to honor the contract. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be that sort of, in other words, obviously they'd be in, they'd be in breach of the contract, and, you know, it might come down to a decision for them of go out of business or continue to serve, right? Because there's significant, you know, there are significant protections in the contract, of course, and they are bound to serve at that price, right? No matter what. However, you know, if they're in the position to go out of business from, you know, from servicing this contract, that makes it more difficult. You know, we do still have legal recourse, of course, but it's quite difficult, you know, if they really are at that position. I don't know, Mike, if you wanted to say.
So
more.
what we've historically done is, if you need to, first of all,
This has happened, all right, so
Yeah.
this isn't a fictitious,
Yep.
what do you call it, a hypothetical. This has
And it
happened, I'm aware of it.
particularly was happening around the country when rates got more volatile. So early in '22. And so what we have done is, first of all, we want to make sure that companies are hedged, that they bought hedged products. So the vigilance on the companies buying the hedging products to protect themselves in the event of volatile, that vigilance has gone up. The vigilance on the two things. One, the size of the companies. The companies, the credit worthiness of the companies. So for instance, the companies that are apt to bid at this stage have way more to lose by not honoring a contract, not only their license in New York, because the Department of Public Service and the Public Service Commission has backed us with respect to enforcing these contracts, but also throughout the United States, their reputation and their financial viability throughout the United States, it needs to be large enough for us to actually bring in some of the smaller companies. The approach we've taken is that contractually, those companies need to be willing to novate in the contract, so that we, in essence, should the company go out of business, can take the hedge that they have purchased and then move that hedge to whoever else is in the market, so that they are also capable of serving those customers. That's if you really feel that you want to go with some of these smaller companies. We will build that in. So either verifying the hedge and assuring that the companies have more to lose by backing out, or working with smaller companies who then contractually commit to novate.
Okay, and our arrangement with you, let's say we do find after this RFP process, a company that even after LIPERs, all their fees is a better deal for our ratepayers over, let's say, a few-year period. At least we believe, we don't know what the market, where the other, where LIPER's other customers would go. But how is our contract structured? Let's say 2 or 3 year, is it a 2-year agreement or with you guys? Do we have or are our ratepayers are they locked in with your company over, for years and years and years? Or do we have an ability to terminate the contract and basically opt everybody out at some point? Or is it just something that renews and renews and renews? Because it sounds like there's an initial opt-out period, but and there's an ongoing, I guess people can opt out whenever they want, but that's still an amount of work. So I'm just wondering whether there's an opportunity for us to revisit this in a certain amount of time and say, we're done with you guys, we're not interested anymore.
Yeah.
And then everybody then either reverts to LIPO or we bring in another CCA administrator.
That's exactly right. So the contracts typically are 2 to 3 years. There's no auto renew at all,
Okay.
right? So that when that contract, now the individual, as you said, the individual customers can opt out at any time or opt back in at any time. The town is committed for that 2 or 3 year period, but at the end of that 2 year, 3 period, there's no automatic renewal, or there's no club, there's no extension at all. It's
Okay.
only if you choose to continue.
Okay. that's
And
what
that relates to what we were just saying about the hedge. So you want to make sure that a company is fully hedged when they get into a contract. If they have then purchased that hedge, they've put substantial financial commitments into assuring that rate. So that's the 2 to 3 year contract.
No, I just want to make
commitment.
sure, because I've seen contracts that seem to just go on forever, and
Yeah.
then if we're not happy, we can't really get rid of somebody
Yeah.
without buying out their contract,
Yeah.
and it's not good for the taxpayers, so.
Yeah.
And by the way, when we send out to bid, we will offer up, the suppliers to offer up various length of contracts. So that is going to be part of the metric that you'll be
But
deciding on.
there's no automatic renewal,
No.
that's the main thing. All right, Cindy?
So my question was more along the lines of, anybody that has heating by oil knows, like, do you buy into the contract or not?
Yeah.
So it sounds to me like this was kind of answered already, that you can opt in or opt out at any time. So if you were really savvy and you really wanted to, you could pay attention to what LIPA's rates were, and if it goes lower, you can opt out and go
You
back
can,
with LIPA and then
you
opt
can.
back in.
We don't recommend that sort of day trading or it's
I'm
just very
I'm talking on the
different. Yes.
consumer end.
Yes, you can do that, right. It's not a reliable strategy for consumers.
I don't think anybody's gonna take the time out of their
Yeah.
day to
In
do
fact,
that.
it may
it's
be
not
the
Vegas.
opposite.
But I'm just, you know what I mean? If there
Yes.
was, something in the news that, they lowered their rates
No, it's
substantially,
perfect, makes
you
sense.
can get out, you
Yes,
know?
absolutely.
Yes.
The other question I had was really this based on cost, and I know, we keep saying 100% renewable. Will we see different pricing where, it's not hard to improve on 3%? So will we see maybe that
Yeah.
there's better pricing at 90% renewable?
Yes.
Yes.
And be able to go with the lowest price versus locking into 100%
Yeah,
renewable?
there's premium for every step that you take, and usually what we do is we offer really 3 sort of price points, so to speak. A standard, which will mirror in large part the utility and be the lowest cost. A 50% renewable product, which will be somewhere in between, and then a 100% renewable.
Okay.
And you'll see sort of what that delta is between A, B, and C. How much does it cost to get to 50 versus 100, and then you'll make that decision. And you'll make that decision of which to set as the default, which most people will stick with the default. But if you offer, say you offer all 3 of those options, each individual consumer, those savvy consumers, can say, oh, I'd like to step up to 100, I don't care that
You
it's an
can do that
extra-
on an individual
in an
basis.
individual basis, that's right.
So they could pick whatever, so it's not really we're picking, and we're locking everybody in?
Well, you're picking the default, which is a very important
Yeah.
decision because about 95% of people will stick with whatever the default is.
Mm-hmm.
That's just the way it is. But in terms of autonomy, every individual customer can go to whichever available option.
Even though we've signed an agreement with a certain provider?
Well, the supplier will
the
say,
same.
I'll bring all
Different
3.
supplier, yeah.
I'll bring all 3. You tell me which is the default, and then I will allow
And we can put that information out to the public and let them know what their options are?
exactly right. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's interesting too, because I'm reviewing other CCA things. There are people who will actually want to pay a premium for renewable.
Yeah,
Sure.
and there's some
will
people
do
that
it.
need the money.
So I think it's really wonderfully tailored. That's what I like about this program, is it's wonderfully tailored to the needs of the individual consumer without having, a big.
No, that's a great, that's a great, to me, that answers a lot of the issues that I had with it, that you're not, that we are offering people, this is the lowest rate, and this is if you want to do 100% renewable, you can pay that premium. And I thought we were locking everybody into that one rate.
No.
No, and of course, even of those available rates, they can still look at all those choices and say, no, thank you.
Okay,
I'll stick with LIPO, or I'm
That's fair.
going to go seek some other supply. Yeah.
Other questions?
No, but it's kind of interesting, because when I first heard about CCA, I was a little reticent, it's complicated.
yeah.
But not really after you get into it. But calling some of the other municipalities, the success of that, or those stories were unsolicited, which is never the case. But then I remember when I was going to school in California and the rate per kilowatt hour, and I'd come here to New York and I'd see my parents' power bill, and it was like at that time, I'm dating myself, it was almost a semester of my tuition. It was an amazing difference, and I love this idea because I think it's going to give people the option to do exactly that. It's their choice, not our choice, not
That's,
not
I mean,
Big
that's
Brother.
key to me.
And we'll realize some very real savings to me. I think that's cool. And I think that's what if you think about it, we're the third or fourth highest price per kilowatt hour of any state in the union.
Yeah.
That's huge, and it hurts people, genuinely hurts them. And here we have an opportunity to help. So that's.
What do you
that's what
guys consider renewable? Obviously hydroelectric and solar and wind, but are you also considering nuclear as renewable?
No, it's really mostly those three. Now, there are others that meet but in terms of wholesale availability of resources, it's really hydro, solar.
Okay, I just want to make sure, because I have still concerns about the nuclear power industry, so.
Yeah,
Yes.
no nuclear.
We share that.
Now,
Some people consider it renewable. I
Yeah,
don't.
I don't.
I don't, but
well, interestingly, I showed that slide earlier about New York, the 100% carbon-free by 2040, the difference between carbon-free and renewable is nuclear, right? That's that distinction, but, so.
Until they have a thorium reactor, then maybe I'll get on.
Well, yeah, but Frank reminds me that we should. I know, and it's of course critically important that we talk about the kind of nuts and bolts of it. But I do just want to talk about. Maybe you can go past this, Frank, just to where. Yeah, keep going. So what we want the board to just be aware of now is what will start now is that period of outreach and education. And this is, that's a better slide maybe just for the moment, and then I can show. This is just a high-level sort of outreach plan of all the sorts of things that we typically do. Now, we really want to also continue to get your feedback, groups in town that we should be connecting with, social media. I know in my village does CCA in Westchester, and whenever there's a new contract, the place where people talk about it are on the parent Facebook groups, right? So things like that. We want to hear about where are those points where people are actually having a discussion about these types of things in town, so that we can meet people where they are. But it's press releases, it's tabling at the farmers market, it's physical signage like flyers outside of town hall or other public buildings. It's website posts, our website, your website, social media, and we like to use as much as possible the municipal channels. So I don't know if you've got a sort of, supervisor's newsletter or anything like that, a listserv or anything like that we could use.
I have a TV show.
Oh, that's perfect. We'd love to, if you'd have us on, we'd love to come and,
Yeah, I could have you on the
we're a
show.
very exciting guest.
Well,
We
just to
can bring
clarify,
props and everything.
Just to clarify, the town has a TV.
I'm just the host.
But yeah, those are great. We've done those, we've done a lot of those, and those come out usually, they're great because they're very engaging ways to learn about the material. And I think you can even push forward, Frank, just to give you a sense.
This version of PowerPoint is
It's not a bad idea
cooperating with
doing
me.
a talk of the town show. We
I
put it
can't
on
seem to
channel
advance the
20 and
slides.
22.
Yeah, and people, it's interesting when we
And
go
then
on
we
these
can link
types
that
of.
too, so.
What's that?
It's also, we can put it on YouTube and link that.
Exactly, and interesting, when we do live events like that, like you're talking about, we get a lot of questions. People call in and we get a lot of questions. It's really a good conversation.
I gotta read.
Don't worry about it. The last couple slides are just some sample materials for you to look at, but it's in your printout. Just as what they're going to look, what materials tend to look like when we do these campaigns. We've got a sort of, we've done this, dozens and dozens of times. We've got a sort of, a playbook that we know works. But again, it's really about, a sort of interaction, hearing from you what could work in your, the senior center over here on Smith Street, or the,
Yeah,
and
we
we
could guide
continue
you.
to just,
But in terms of like, you talked about tabling,
Yeah.
you talked about printed materials. So there's staff costs, there's printing costs, advertising costs, whatever it might be. You guys
yeah,
cover
that's right.
all the costs.
That's right. We shoulder the cost of all the outreach and education. There's no out-of-pocket cost. There is some staff time, so there's some, because there needs to be a point person, a liaison to the program that will work with us to get things put on the website and.
I'll send you a bill for Frank's time.
Yeah, yeah. We've
And
stolen
Deborah's-
plenty of
and
Frank's
Deborah's.
time over the years, so
You'll get my
it's
bill.
gonna be a big.
So, but,
Could be like
so
Norm
can you
and
just
Cheers.
sort of educate the board, although I've heard it in the past, but I wouldn't mind hearing it again, so, the way you guys make your money, because you're not a
Yeah.
not-for-profit, you're a for-profit company.
Yes.
So, there's some administrative fee that you're charging in that bill on a kilowatt hour or whatever it is, so how does that work again?
Yeah, it's a per kilowatt hour administrative fee, if and only if there's a contract signed, and it's paid by the supplier. So it's not an additional line item in the bill, it's baked into the costs. So when they put together their bids, they know that they're gonna have to pay an administrative fee, but we don't get paid anything unless there's a contract signed. So all of this is sort of speculative, right? So we go through all of this, and if at the end you say, look, the price just isn't good enough, we don't wanna sign a contract, it's you're not gonna get an invoice from us.
And-
Yeah.
And then
couple
the
things.
energy supplier,
Energy
just to
supplier
clarify
piece.
that.
Yeah, and when you are comparing the price and making a judgment on that price, that is inclusive of
Your fee,
that.
yes.
Yes. And there's one other thing I wanted to say about the outreach.
And that
It's-
price that you charge is sort of fixed, is that fixed by New York State, what you're allowed to charge per kilowatt?
Not fixed by New York State, but it must be a per kilowatt hour charge. So meaning, no matter who wins,
It's
all the
negotiable.
bidders, so
It's all the same.
there's no favoritism to be, this one's gonna pay us
Is
more.
it
and that
typically
one's-
the same per municipality, or it fluctuates?
you mean-
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
we're consistent across the board,
Yeah.
everybody's getting exactly the same thing. I wanted to say one thing, though, about the outreach, just for clarity. There is a regulatory requirement for specific things to happen at a minimum. We go beyond that, but for specific outreach things to happen for the period of 60 days. And so the data does not get released until that hurdle has been verifiably met. So that's why that when the outreach starts, there are specific things that happen, and then when it finishes, we are then seeking the required data to issue a bid. So that's kind of the
Oh, so
precursor.
you haven't got that from WIPA or PSEG yet, the data that,
No,
okay.
no.
I thought we already authorized you guys to get that data.
We are authorized to get it, but we need to perform the required outreach in order for the Public Service Commission, the Department of Public Service, to then direct the utility to give us the data.
They won't do it
Oh,
voluntarily.
so the
Yeah.
the public outreach is required by the PSC
Yep.
before you access the data from
Yeah.
the
Bingo.
supplier,
Yep,
Yep,
which
from the
is
utility.
from,
the utility, that's
The
right.
utility's gonna tell me
right,
how many
right,
customers,
yeah,
how
the
much.
deliverer, not the supplier, I
Yes.
guess it's
Yes,
confused, yeah.
that's right.
And the clock begins when? What event happens that actually starts the clock? Like, what's the minimal the town needs to do in order to get that clock started?
Hannah Karp, who has been waiting patiently, maybe you want, do you want to just say something about kicking off, Hannah, just so that the board understands what that means?
You're muted.
So make sure, yeah, you're unmuted, and we'll make sure you're unmuted at our end, too.
I'm sure you were being very articulate, Hannah.
Oh, there, we hear
There we
you.
go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. So the item to kick off your outreach and education will be posting these educational posters, which Lynn has in her inbox now. It is a basic item, which just explains that Jewel is the program administrator, what opt-out is, what this might mean to customers. And that would kick off the beginning of your outreach and education period. The next things that would happen would be having public info sessions. Those are very important and required by the state. The plan currently is to have 3 of those hybrid meetings in town hall, 1 each month, 1 in March, 1 in April, and 1 in May. This will be a meeting that people can attend in person to ask questions or attend virtually to ask questions. I'm working with Lynn on those, getting those events finalized and set up.
Thank you.
So those would not be
Left
town
them
board
speechless,
meetings,
huh?
those would be,
No,
right, they're just,
it wouldn't be town board meetings. They would,
Be a standalone.
okay.
they would use the room.
Room, yeah.
In fact, they have to
They'd be
a
public
standalone.
information meetings.
Okay,
Just
that's
public
fine, I just,
information.
Of the actual state requirements, are the main ones are having these educational posters up and making sure that we have public info sessions that are properly promoted through flyers and other networks. Those are the essential pieces. We are also planning to do support them with some tabling locally as well all the things that Glenn mentioned. It's important to get out in the press. It's important to use the local newsletter networks, flyering, library newsletter, etc. Everything that is available in your community to reach people. At this point, again, the education is very general, explaining what the potential timeline is and making it clear that the town is just exploring this option. They have not committed to it yet. But we want to update people and let them know what the potential is for them and how it may impact them.
And we can certainly do hybrid meetings from this location where we are today, but a lot of our residents are west of the Shinnecock Canal, particularly in the Hampton Bays community. And if you're gonna do 3 meetings, it sort of would be nice to do one in the Hampton Bays community, either at the library or the senior center or something like that. Might not be able to do it as a hybrid meeting, but you'll get different participation if you
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, and I think we're still in the throes
Another
of trying to
conversation, so
design that.
Lynn, Frank, Deborah, and I were talking about event locations. So we do have a requirement that we have these in-person events or a hybrid event, but we've also discussed with Lynn, making sure that there's some evening availability for some people who are working during the day. So whether that's an in-person or a totally virtual Zoom event, and also using libraries are a great place to do events. Libraries, community center, rec center.
so the minimum is 3, you can do more.
Yeah, so I guess if it have to be hybrid, we can do 3 here, but then additional
Minimum.
outreach in, the area where, the bulk of our population is.
Yeah, so we could do 3 hybrid here, and then we could do in-person meetings elsewhere.
Right.
Yeah, and then from that, when we've met that need, then we'll get the data that we need to be able to make a decision whether it's viable to do or not. And it hasn't cost us anything to do, which, I think your business model is wonderful. I'm not quite sure if I could do the same, but I think this makes so much sense. And then we make a decision.
When we compare to look to make sure that the ratepayers are saving, are experiencing savings, or you using, or are we using a weighted sort of, or an averaging over the past year, or are we just
Yeah.
gonna use what the current bill is and this is lower because their LIPA rates fluctuate constantly.
Yeah.
And so if you look at it, if you just take one snapshot, you may not be looking at a fair assessment of value.
Absolutely. The standard metric is trailing 12-month average, like you said, weighted. And then, of course, also looking forward. So, because that is what the suppliers will use to price, right? They won't care what happened last year. They're
Future-
looking at what the future
Future
market is telling them.
contracts,
And LIPA, and so we'll look the same to map that as to what nobody can predict utility prices. But a general sense of what we expect LIPA prices to do, what they've done, and then what we generally expect them to do.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure we're not using one bill cycle, we're using at least a 1-year period.
Yes, that's
And averaging, we're weighting the average on that, and then comparing this power purchase agreement over time to that over time. So it's an apples to apples, not, something that might look good in one particular month, but may not be,
Yeah, no,
Well,
that's-
it's not
Standard.
in their interest to do that either,
Well, but,
frankly. So, I mean, I appreciate that completely, because, you don't know completely. So you're taking somewhat of a risk if we went to that. I
well, we
totally
put
get
this
it.
condition on them that it would
Yeah.
have to be a savings to our customers. I just want to
Right.
make sure it's not just they
cherry pick them.
yeah, you're not
Yeah,
comparing it to one anomalous
It's not dark
month that happened to have a high
No.
utility rate because there was a conflict going on or, global conflict or whatever it might be that spiked up energy costs. So I want to make sure it's a fair comparison.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right,
No, we're, absolutely.
all right. Lynn, did you have anything you wanted to say?
I'd like to put a poster up tomorrow.
Can I ask you, there's a lot in the news recently about Brookhaven with, I guess, is it National Grid or Natural Grid or?
I think Frank, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
So they did a CCA not on electricity, just
On
on,
gas.
on a natural gas. And I guess that there's a lot of infrastructure, there's a lot of, like 45,000 homes or something that are serviced by natural gas infrastructure.
all?
Maybe more.
I think it's many more. Brookhaven is, I think, 200,000 households.
How many of them are in villages?
Don't know. That I don't.
But anyway, they,
Villages, however?
The villages have to make their independent decision.
There's quite a few villages.
so I don't, that number somehow, I remember
Anyway, it's big.
45,000 households or something like that.
Because
I don't know how many we have. I think Hampton
with
Bays
gas.
has gas infrastructure. The village here has gas infrastructure, though maybe we're
I
not.
think Frank knows.
We have that number. It's, I didn't bring it with me, but it is probably about 10% of the customer number of what Brookhaven has.
10%
That
of
are
Brookhaven.
that are natural gas customers, residential and small business. And
So-
and that's information
So
we got
maybe
from National Grid.
4,000 customers in that
I
range.
think less.
In that neighborhood.
Well-
I can give the board the hard number. I have it in an email. I just don't have it.
Because
stored up in
I
my
was
memory
approached by a different CCA, which claimed that you guys really don't do this, you do electricity, not gas. I don't know if there's enough ratepayers to make it worth looking at, but can we explore that?
Yeah, we're in the process of doing that, and the other factor in that decision is we're committed to looking for renewable energy sources, and natural gas doesn't necessarily fit in that category. It doesn't make it an outlier completely, but the analysis of where's the value in terms of the volume of customers, and would we get an ESCO? I think a company from Texas is the one that won the contract with Brookhaven.
Brookhaven, yeah. No, it's not renewable, however, it is a cleaner than diesel, certainly, and coal, and it could be a bridge to the
Cost
future.
savings perspective.
you
There are
requested-
certainly a lot of people who heat their homes with gas and cook with
You
gas.
requested the
and
information and.
provide hot water and pool heating and whatever it is with gas, and,
Yeah, we've reached out to National Grid to get not only the exact number of customers that are being serviced by their company, but also the amount of therms that are being produced, because that's really, the consumption is really the factor, not necessarily the number of customers. And we have that information, and we'll look at it.
I know that Brookhaven believes that their CCA arrangement will save their ratepayers, I think they said $5 million over a 2-year period or something like that.
So to give you a number, though, on that point,
You know,
You
and,
just
and of
made-
course, that's speculative, that's based on, that weighted average, et cetera.
Is it an all-year program, or is it, because I know that a lot of the gas programs have been winter only, just to address the pool issue. The CCA gas programs in New York have primarily been heating season only, and then you get returned to the utility after that. So it actually, I don't know about this, about Brookhaven's program, but.
Yeah, I don't know
That's
much
true.
about it either. I'm just asking
water
whether we
heating,
can take a close
home
look
heating,
at it
right
and see
now.
if it's applicable to
infrastructure
us.
is
We
so
can, but one of the
Yeah,
factors
yeah.
that Glenn is alluding to, though, is what are the details of the actual contract that they have? Because we want to be able to compare apples to apples. And if it's a heating season only contract, then that's one level of analysis. If it's all year, what's the rate that they're being offered? What's the contract terms for fluctuation in that rate? We want to get all of those
You should get
details.
that. And Lynn, you have a relationship there with Brookhaven too.
Yeah,
so you can-
we're friendly.
And we
friendly.
would,
They all opted in.
and we would not, we would not say you are going to get XYZ savings, but I do believe there would be a contract offered from the competitive market were you to choose to go that way. We could, yes, capable.
Yeah, I guess there's only one supplier, right? So it's a sort of different, where with the utility, with the electricity, you have all these ESCOs.
There are
Options.
six,
monopolist.
There are
who
6
would
in
bid.
natural gas?
yes,
Well,
who would prospectively bid.
If I could, just want to talk quickly about a number on the electricity side, since
You
you
wanna
threw that.
Just come up to the mic a little
Oh.
bit, Lynn, so.
Because I issued a FOIL request, we know what the total consumption is for electricity for the town. So for 50, what are we, about 45, 50,000 households? If you divide that by the total consumption, even if this bid saves a half a penny, that's $3 million in aggregate per year. So it far surpasses what the benefit is that Brookhaven's getting with gas savings for their customers.
On a per capita basis, sure.
Mhm.
It's,
Electricity's quite,
can I ask you, just because
substantial.
a moment ago, there was a question about, I think you maybe, Mike, you brought up the village.
Yeah.
Villages have their own authority. But when we're talking about CCA administrator, we've always been talking about the whole town inclusive of villages. Are we not? Are the villages not involved with this?
The villages are a separate
They have to take a
municipality.
separate vote to.
We've had conversations with villages who are interested in passing their own legislation. They can become part of the Southampton CCA program, but they do have to pass the local legislation individually as separate municipal entities.
And I
Okay.
would imagine that typically the way that would go is they see the success and then buy in. And that seems to, like with the community housing fund, we have the same issue where people wait to kind of see how that goes.
But do we get a better rate if they're all in to begin with?
We would, yeah.
Maybe more
Definitely.
rate.
I would ask them their opinion.
Maybe not.
Typically, like in a vacuum, yes, the greater volume you have, you're gonna see some pricing benefit from it. In this case, this is the electricity supply market in Long Island just opened up, and there's something to be said for taking a modest step first. Not to say that the town of Southampton is plenty big on its own without the village, unincorporated, without the villages, is plenty big enough to fetch a really competitive price. But, there's something to be said for a first contract, especially given there's still some questions about liquidity of the wholesale markets on Long Island, because it's really not used to serving this type of competitive activity. To start with the town on its own, let the as Mr. Bouvier is saying, let the villages see that success and then come on. And I actually don't think you'd see any additional price benefit from additional load at this point. I think the town on its own is sort of right-sized.
But when you guys advertise it publicly, it should just be clear that this isn't something that's happening in the villages.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important.
There's also a competition, right? If Brookhaven were to go out with a bid for electricity supply, their consumption certainly is much larger than Southampton, so wouldn't they suck up all the available,
Yeah,
isn't that a part
Yeah,
of it
I don't
as
even
well?
know if it would be viable. There'd be so much power they need that, again, these are sort of, it's kind of
So
where
it actually helps us being smaller? in
it
this
helps us
case?
being a
Yes.
little, because we're not small. If we're, we deal with a lot of municipalities
Which is
that are
right.
one or 2,000. This is like
It's like
30,000.
Goldilocks.
Plus, all the growth,
It's a Goldilocks.
all the growth that has happened since the pandemic is even better. I mean, we're substantial enough. We're the size of the original, I think, Westchester.
We went out for 110,000 homes initially in Westchester
But they
when
don't
we
use as
first
much
did.
power as they
Yeah,
do
that's
here.
right.
It's true. It's true.
The
You may be
per-
right.
Well, we did this math. I mean, on Long Island, the consumption per household on Long Island is almost 30% higher than what the average
Energy
number is
hogs
in.
out here.
Yeah.
I'm a native, so I'm allowed to
Yeah, but you
say
see
it.
the graph in the
Pools,
summer,
there's
you
two
know.
pools
it's-
for
I
every
know,
3
I
homes.
know.
All right, so we're gonna, let me just check. Tom, did you
Just
want
one
to
example.
weigh in here on anything? And Michael, Michelangelo, you guys are good in the back, okay.
So can we put that poster up tomorrow?
Yeah, well, this meeting, in a sense, launches the education outreach campaign, because as the board members know, our meetings are recorded, they're rebroadcast, so it begins the process of reaching out to the public.
Oh, good.
And I know some of the many, if not all of the board members share the surprise that I have every time someone tells me, "Oh, well, I saw this on Channel 22 last night," and I said, "You really do watch that?" And they do. Our public does watch the board meetings, they
If they
do
can
watch
hear
the
it.
work sessions. And I think this serves as a way to hear your questions asked and hear the answers being provided, and it'll supplement the education outreach campaign, I think, very effectively. And any future meetings we have, too, would become part of that.
All right,
That's helpful.
everybody good? Deborah, you're good, you don't need it?
Thank you all very much.
All right.
Yes.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Glenn.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us.
Mike.
Pleasure. Thanks for having us.
Good to see you guys.
All right. Thank you.
I have to leave sharp at 2.
You're leaving sharp at 2?
Yeah, I have to leave at
You're
2.
going to be sharp?
I'll be sharp.
Is Tommy John gone for the duration, or is he coming back?
Yeah, no,
He
I-
had an event,
Oh.
a press thing, usually.
Anything we should know about? All right, so let's just do some updates. I guess, let me start with the event that was held last Friday in West Hampton Beach. They were very thankful for our assistance, the Village of West Hampton Beach, in helping them get their sewer up and running, so they called it the first flush event. A number of us were able to be there. I think most of us were there. And rather than a ribbon cutting, they very cleverly called it the first flush. So, because everything is, the library is now connected to the sewers, and other places, businesses are connecting. The sewer is operational there, and it's certainly part of that, resurgence of downtown, the revitalization of downtown. And of course, Mayor Moore, Assemblyman Thiel, I think Senator Palumbo
Nope.
was not there. Senator
Nope.
Palumbo was not there. There was so many people there, I have to remember.
Balone, the deputy executive,
County Executive Balone was
Scully.
there. Peter Scully was there.
the assistant director of the DEC, or the
Uh,
regional
Rob
director.
Clarker is the deputy regional director of the DEC. Bridget Fleming was there, remember that. So there was.
The entire village board.
Fred Thiel was definitely there. The village board was there. A lot of people. It was a really nice event. Really well-attended event. Lots of people spoke. Yesterday I had the East End Supervisors and Mayors Association, an organization that I chair. We did have Ruth Ann, and I met.
Benakis.
How do you say her last
I
name?
think it's Benakis.
And she's the commissioner for the
Housing.
Housing and Community Renewal Office for the state, to answer questions about the governor's proposal. So as you can expect, there were lots of questions, a lot of clarifications as well. We raised a lot of concerns about the mandate, if that were imposed, and what our actual mandate would be, and what would happen if we couldn't meet the mandate. And there were some aspects that I wasn't aware of that were positive, but on overall, it's still a taking away of home rule. And there are some concerns that, we could not meet our number of new units, and therefore we could be subject to an agency being able to override our local zoning, which I think every town and village was very concerned about. The other thing I wanted to mention too is we're going to have a special meeting. It's not a town board meeting, but I was originally going to do it through supervisors and mayors, but I can't really find a time where I can do it, where our state delegation is available. So we're going to do it as a regular meeting for here. It's an informational meeting. Any council person, any supervisor, village trustee, whatever it might be, town trustee can attend on the county's sewer district proposal. So the county's looking to do a countywide sewer district. The county is looking potentially for an increase in the sales tax of 1/8 of a penny, 1/8 of a percent, to generate around $60 million a year and spend that money based on the sub-watershed plan. I know, John, you've been involved in, it will, that money will basically, significant amounts will go toward IA systems. County's also looking at changing some of the rules. Right now, new construction, you have to do an IA system. They may go to property transfers as well. They're trying to get as many.
Be sure it's an equitable transfer, equitable distribution of money. I think that's probably what you guys were discussing.
We want to make sure it's equitable and the funding formula is fair. And if it's based on the sub-watershed plan, which probably 75% of the priority areas are in our area, we could actually do quite well with it. I was concerned about it trying to be funded through an ad valorem or property tax, where, because of our high values, we're disproportionately funding the county in terms of its property tax collection. And they're not going that route, but the state bill does allow for that route, so the state bill needs to be changed so that it's allows for the property tax increase and not the ad valorem assessment. So I don't know how long it's going to be before we see that go through, but we are going to have a meeting so that we're understanding what the county is up to and make sure that it doesn't hurt our area. It could be beneficial to our area. So we're getting Peter Scully to come out. Janice, you're saying that he's also coming to a work session, potentially?
I thought that's what he was,
No, it's going to
We
be
were
just a special
inviting him
meeting. I don't think it's a work session of the town board. I think it's
well, those are the dates that we gave him, work session dates.
okay, then we'd have to make it then an open to everybody, because
That's okay.
if that's the way we're doing it, I thought it was just going to be a special meeting.
That's
In
easiest,
this
because
room.
everyone's already got those dates on their calendars for
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So we'll clarify that.
Just make it one of the work sessions where we don't do agenda review.
And I know, Cindy, you were on the Zoom meeting with me over the County Road 39 sidewalk.
We were all
We
on
were
that.
all-
and
Well, everybody was on.
I actually, because that's really what I wanted to
I'll
just,
leave that for you to talk about, but but there are some concerns about traffic for certain during that 2-year period that project will be going on. And then I want to remind everybody too that this Saturday is the West Hampton Beach St. Patrick's Day Parade. I think it's a rain or shine event. And was to start at noon?
yeah.
Though if you're marching, I think we're supposed to be there at 11:30. All right, that is, I think it for the moment in terms of updates from me. So Cindy, do you want to talk about the sidewalk?
Yeah, I just wanted to briefly, we were all on that Zoom, and I have a lot of concerns. I know Councilman Bouvier brought up concerns about the area around the Old Lobster Inn and the marsh and the water exchange there. It seems to me a huge undertaking for what could be a very downsized project. You know, when we asked about why, you know, what were they doing for safety for pedestrians to cross 39, they stated that, well, we're putting sidewalks on both sides that people don't have to cross. The issue with that is, it depends on whether you're taking the bus eastbound or westbound. You 100% have to cross that road if you get off the bus and have to cross to go back to where you came from. I asked about them putting the bus stops where they know people are getting on the buses. They said that wasn't feasible because of space constraints, and meanwhile, there are several bus stops up and down County Road 39 where there is no pullout, where the buses simply stop and pick people up and drop them off. I had major issues with the traffic and the closures, because as you all know, I mean, we moved our work sessions to get outside of those peak hours, and, you know, a lot of people have. So now all of those people that have rearranged their schedules to travel in those times are now going to hit construction for 2 years. It just seems like a very large undertaking, and we have a history with the county where if you go by CPI and you look at that intersection and how horrible it ended up being because there was no input from the town. I asked the chief of police, were you made aware of this project of 2 years of road closures? He said, no, I read about it in the Southampton Press. None of us were made, I mean, this is just, if you're gonna do a 2-year project in a town where the town is going to then have to then take on the maintenance of what you're putting in, especially, our town engineer hasn't yet seen the plans and they're going out to bid. It just seems very poor on the county's part to not include the town and make sure that we're working together and they're addressing the issues that we actually have, because I don't think that this addresses the safety concerns on County Road 39. You can drive through there right now and you can see where there are sidewalks. There are paths, walking paths on the outside of the sidewalks because people don't feel safe walking on the sidewalks next to 39. So now you're putting sidewalks with 3-foot retaining walls where people are pinned between a retaining wall and the cars traveling down 39. I don't think it was really thought out well, and I wish that the county had done a better job of including the town in this decision and make us a part of it from the beginning and have conversations. And instead, it seems like we're at the finish line and they're telling us, nope, this is what we're doing. Live with it.
Well, I thought it was, I had some concerns too, but I think having the opportunity for the first time, and I do agree with you in some cases, being able to be part of a project ahead of time is critical. This was an opportunity for the public to weigh in what their concerns were. The tape will be available, that people can see it in its entirety, and I think that's important, that people can view that and make up their own minds. It focused largely on the issues of the timing, and I think that's the largest concern anybody would have, is the traffic and how that's going to be managed. What they're offering is give them input. They want to have that input, so I think it's incumbent on, if you have an issue, that we should get those issues to them to be considered and factor that into.
All I plan on.
Because they're in a short timeline too, which surprised me a little bit, because my feeling is that maybe the public meeting could have come later, earlier, but it didn't. But we did at least have the opportunity to raise some concerns and move forward with that. I can't really comment on the sidewalk issue. I don't take the bus, but that seems to make sense. But I think those are comments that you should certainly give in to them, so that they
And just so everybody
so
knows,
that they respond to it as
Yeah.
well. I think that's critical. So
March 28th, they are doing another info session on the North Sea Road.
Okay.
So.
All right, I'm going to change the tone a little bit here. So we did have a very successful pancake breakfast. The Youth Bureau got together this past Saturday. Very well attended, even though the weather was iffy. They had some raffles, they raised the price of the breakfast just a little bit because they had not made any money the last couple of years. They made a couple $1,000s that can go back into travel to their special events, especially when they go up to Albany and several other things that they undertake. So congratulations to them. Everybody should be aware that the Welcome to Flanders sign on 105.
Yeah, right,
104?
East Quad.
Yeah, was stolen
Yeah. Oh, I thought they got a new one already.
about a month or so ago, and they really have no leads on it. I know our highway, county DPW, myself, we all looked around to see if it was a prank, that they took it down, threw it in the woods. We've never found it. But a business has stepped up to replace the sign.
Oh, that's good.
And they were on Channel 4, and Tips is putting out a $5,000 reward. So as soon as Franca can give me that press release, I hope to share it, with the town, so maybe we can get some leads on it.
And isn't Prunka looking for photos of the duck to
So-
include on the sign?
Yeah, so apparently the duck in the photo that they used was the picture of the duck with a computer-generated background. So they're trying to find the original
original.
picture to recreate exactly the way it was.
I think,
Good luck.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm sure it'll come out great either way.
So I have, John, do you have anything?
I seem like I was the only elected official not at the first flush event.
You were mentioned.
Oh,
You were mentioned.
You were given quite a nice,
I certainly talked you up.
I appreciate that. It was a good project for CPF, and it was a lot of work, so I'm really happy. I couldn't make it for reasons I understand it. But it's really nice to see that happen. That's become such a beautiful downtown, and, I'd like to, push CPF towards beautifying other downtowns, and I think that's helpful.
I wasn't sure you weren't gonna be there until I looked down into the hole to make sure you weren't in your scuba gear.
Oh, I should have thought of that. But it's really nice, and I, talked with Mayor Moore about it, and it's just nice to see the whole purpose of CPF actually get and do what it was intended to do, and I like that.
Well, I wanted to say, we all can't speak at these things, but two things. One is, this is what happens when government says yes first, and it all worked out. And also, when they cut that ribbon, that was the starting line for all the other hamlets and villages to have the same thing happen.
Yeah. I agree.
Absolutely.
Yep.
One other thing I'll mention tonight, 7 PM at Bay Street, there's a benefit concert. I know I'm not playing, not on this one, I don't think so. But it is, I am emceeing or co-emceeing with Tracy Mitchell from Bay Street, a benefit concert for Turkey and Syria earthquake victims. And it's actually one in our community, actually East Hampton, a woman and her child who survived the earthquake, who is now here as a refugee of that earthquake. And she'll be at the concert, I'm told, tonight, and we might be able to hear some of her story. So it's, about 50,000 people were killed, maybe more than 50,000 people. And I'm sure you've seen the images of how decimated Turkey is. How many buildings have just collapsed, and it's really tragic. And the Hoodoo Loungers are playing, and Gene Casey and the Loan Sharks are playing. Starts at 7 p.m. It's a low ticket price, so hopefully people will donate more, and it should be a nice event. So.
It's a good event for a good cause. It's great.
Yeah, Bay Street's been great in terms of, when we've had disasters like this, whether it was, Hurricane Katrina or the Fukushima in Japan or the Haiti earthquake, whatever the tragedy has been, Bay Street has rallied the community and tried to show that the Hamptons area, it does care about people outside of its region, so it's very, very important. Okay, we have executive session items. We have confidential legal advice. We have personnel. We have acquisitions. And is there anything else for exec? I guess that's it, so we'll make a motion to end our work session and go into executive session on those items.
Second.
Seconded by Councilman Bouvier, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we are adjourned for all other purposes.